Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsor this week is Oracle, and I'm joined as ever by Wes Hilliard. And now, Wes, we need to talk faster this week, I think, because lots have been going on. Let's start with, how are you doing? How are you coping with this torrent of news and new betas and everything?
Doing fine. Yeah, I could do my 1.5 speed voice, see if that works out. I don't think anyone would enjoy it. No, we're on beta 5, which historically the odd numbers have been more stable. Don't ask me why. That's just how it works. That's the science.
Really? I didn't know that. That's like the Star Trek films. The odd ones were better than the evens. Okay, you might dispute that there's much of a gap between the two, but okay. Okay, so hang on. Which way around is it? Odd is good. Should I upgrade to beta 5?
Of course. I mean, especially this late in the season, I think it's smart to go ahead and just upgrade. Wait maybe a few minutes, make sure there's nothing on fire, but there's been no reports. Seems fine. Everything's pretty stable on my end. I don't even think I've got a boot loop since I've installed the beta this time, which is great because I've been getting them frequently on my iPhone anyway. Yeah. They added toggle to change the camera switcher, which everyone's been complaining about because I'm going to make a video game reference, William. So if you're playing a video game that involves flying, you're flying a vehicle. Are you aware that there are 2 ways to control that flying vehicle with a joystick?
No. It's just like a collective, and
it's like controlling it in real life, right? So if you press down on the press up on the joystick, which direction does the plane go? The nose of the plane.
Well, I'm thinking helicopters. You would tilt forward to go fast, so the nose would go down in order to move faster. Is that what we're talking, or is this?
Yes. So that is actually considered normal, and then maybe I'm getting this reversed, but it doesn't matter. Moving on, or inverted, meaning you press up to go literally up. So even though in real life, if you are holding the controls for a plane or a helicopter, as you say, and you press forward, the helicopter or plane will go down. Same goes for a video game. But people who get confused by that for whatever reason can invert that and press up to go up, right? It's inverted. And the camera control, I bring this up, it feels like it's inverted. Or right, like you swipe right to go left. It doesn't make sense. I don't know if you've played with this at all in the beta, if you've had any reason to change your... if you've never had any reason to change your camera control, right now I'm swiping. It's kind of counterintuitive. It's not that bad once you get used to it, but if you're coming from the other system, it feels like the menu shouldn't be moving the opposite direction that you're swiping. So it can be a little bit jarring for users. So people are complaining about that. Anyway, I bring all this up is because people's complaints apparently have gotten to Apple, or at least the testers have noticed, and they've given the users the option to toggle back to the original camera view.
Oh, I see.
Right. Which seems to be a running theme in iOS 26. We have, I think, a Safari setting that switches Safari back to its previous view. I can't remember. There was one more that I remember being... phone. The phone redesign has an option to switch back to its original view. So, what do you think of this? Is Apple hedging too much?
Well, I suppose we're in the beta testing, so it's trying stuff out. I don't like it when it wedges in a, all right then, go back to the way it was if you like button. I like it when it makes, I was going to say good moves. What's on my mind now is such a long time ago, Apple reversed the direction of scrolling on the Mac compared to a PC. And at first I thought this was idiotic, and yet now, I'm trying to remember which is the wrong way. Which is how PCs
natural
use it and things.
Yeah, natural versus unnatural scrolling, right?
Yeah. So I like it when they thought that through, did it, and stuck with it. Yeah. The thing with adding in a SOP like this, and it is a SOP, that's the right word for it, people who were shouting loudest can be told, well, there is that option for you. And most of the 3 billion iPhone users, or however many it is that are still active, that sounds wrong, like they died off. I mean, however many iPhones, Apple sold 3 billion iPhones, not all of them are still in use. This is what I mean. The giant majority of users will never look for that setting and never, I take it you'll never come across it by accident. You're not prompted through it. So Apple gets what it wants, but it feels a bit kind of mealy-mouthed giving an option like that. Yeah.
I don't mind there being options for users, especially for accessibility reasons, but at the same time,
true.
I want Apple to be opinionated, and I want them to hold their opinion strongly. So maybe this is just a beta toggle. It might remain through to the final release. It's hard to say. But for the people who want it, great, it's there. The whole thing is very odd because, again, we're getting close to the end of the beta cycle. The people complaining on the web are the nerds. I think the most passionate voices yell the loudest. From the normal human beings that I've interacted with outside of this, I've really not gotten too many complaints. Mostly just praise. They're like really excited about Liquid Glass. They've changed their icons to be clear because they think it's cool. They love the photos, brought back the tab view. They're raving about Auto Mix in Apple Music. I haven't heard any complaints about the camera view or anything. So, I don't know. I think the thing people notice the most is the places that get the most friction. And maybe the camera view would be a place with a lot of friction if it completely upends the direction you're swiping, ruining that muscle memory. But overall, I think it's fine. I think Apple's really leaning into its design here, and I think we're not going to see much change. But I did notice, William, we published something the other day. You had a really good article on how to back up your Mac on macOS Tahoe, but did you know it was immediately outdated when we hit publish?
That's the story of my life, really. Well, actually, I'm used to that from other types of news, but not technology. Right, I mean technology. It lasts at least a week. Okay, right, so I missed this. What do I need to go back and hurriedly fix and pretend? Yeah, I knew that. That was fine. Yeah, deliberately.
I noticed as I hit publish, and I thought it was funny. The day I published this, the betas came out and changed the icon for drives.
Oh, right.
On the Mac, right? And so, your lead image is the old icon. So I wonder what you think of Apple coming up behind you and messing with your stuff.
Well, I think this actually ties back to what you just said, that we want Apple to have strong opinions. I just want them to be my strong opinions and for them to work to my schedule instead of theirs. Yeah, I really worried there that I'd missed a procedural thing and that maybe somebody out there was diligently following my, I promise you, very carefully worked out instructions, and Apple had changed something and it all broke and it was my fault. And the guilt level was rising here. Just the icon...
Making you a little worried.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, I kind of miss the icon change because I haven't updated macOS Tahoe, so I'm still on it with the old one, as you now see. And part of me is thinking, should I stick on this? I like it, but the new one's cute. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of critiques here. So there's a few things. It changes perspective a little bit. The Apple logo is not tilted to go with the perspective of the drive. Why does it have an Apple logo? Why is it an external drive when it's meant to show off your internal drive? Why is there a port and lights for your internal drive? So what's going on? This looks like, honestly, something I would have made in Dreamweaver in like 2002 for a flash page on the web, right?
Ouch.
Like, yeah, you make like you make a rectangle with some reflective edges, and then add a staple on a port to the front of it, like, and then the logo's just not even aligned with the actual design tilt of the entire drive. So I don't know what's going on here. I have a feeling that maybe this will get updated in the next beta. Just, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't need an Apple logo. It should be a chip or something. I don't know. It feels weird that it's an SSD external, like a Samsung T2 style SSD when it's meant to be your internal drive.
We need Susan Kerr to come back and do more brilliant designs the way she did originally to kind of convey things in icon form, because everything's, I mean, isn't it, is Microsoft Word still labeling the save button with an image of a floppy disk? Because I don't know what a save icon should be. So drives,
I think it's okay that some things just become what they are. I think this was being talked about on either Connected or Upgrade, one of those million podcasts I listen to. So sorry if I borrow anyone's ideas, but this is being widely discussed in our communities. And I think it's okay that sometimes, even if icons, their representation doesn't exist anymore, like the envelope for mail, it's not, we're not mailing anything. Do people put things in an envelope and stick a stamp on the front and mail it anymore? Right, the stamp was used on the Mac forever, and then now they're an envelope.
That's true.
Both are outdated. They switched to the still outdated version. But how do you represent an email? It doesn't have a form. It's a piece of digital paper. So I don't know. I think a lot of it's just weird. I heard them describing the podcast icon because I want to get into this. So we have a new AirDrop icon in Mac OS.
Yes, I noticed that. Yes.
And they were saying again, sorry for borrowing conversation for other podcasts, but I thought it was interesting. They were saying that the AirDrop icon, Find My icon, and podcast icon are too similar. And now looking at them, there's enough difference, but they are abstracted to the point of being very similar. There's a circle in the middle, there's waves going outward, but they're just different colors. I had never heard, and I wonder if you have, I've never heard anyone describe the podcast icon as a person with radio waves emanating in or out of it. I thought it was a microphone.
Oh, no, I saw it as a person. I realise I've just said that I've seen this when I haven't updated the Mac. I've seen these on the iPhone. I didn't, because I updated the iPhone. I didn't realise that. But yeah, that looked like a person to me. I've never consciously thought about it, but now I have.
Yeah, I always thought it was a microphone. That was just something that took me off guard when they mentioned it, and I had to go look. And yeah, I guess it is a little person, kind of like what you would see in the Game of Life, like a little player piece. Anyway, so what do you think?
Yeah.
Of the icon
I get
change,
confused,
especially for AirDrop. Yeah.
Well, which believe it is moments before we started talking that I had to AirDrop something to someone, and I thought, oh, that's actually rather nice. That was good. But overlapping or conflicting, I for some reason, I know this is me, I get constantly mixed up between the shortcuts and the journal app icon, and they're not even really that similar, but I do. So something that's intentionally similar, I can see that being a problem, but I thought it looked rather nice. And now I'm looking at my iPhone, I think the podcast one looks rather nice. Yeah, I'm kind of okay. Where I have a problem with icons and things and mimicking real life stuff is in things like Logic Pro, where there are faders to drag up and down. And I've used faders. I've worked in radio and things, and I just find it frustrating that we're copying something that will never happen again. But maybe I'm just frustrated with Logic Pro. I'm now into hour 2 of Apple support, remote controlling my screen, trying to fix problems with it. But okay.
Why is games a rocket ship? Right?
Okay. Like to point out, didn't know it was, never looked. But okay. Games is a rocket ship. Is it a space invader? Well, actually, okay. You put me in mind of this. Do you remember a game a long, long time ago called Asteroid? You had a little kind of triangular shaped ship, yeah? If you look at Apple Maps, and when you're driving along, the route on the map, it's the same shape. And it is in Google Maps as well in ways. It's in all of them. Fair. And it's because one of the original software developers, they couldn't draw a car. They thought, we'll try something. The asteroid shape looks nice.
I love the triangle,
everybody,
though.
Yeah. We've come to associate it with what it wasn't. And I think that's great. So I'm happy with that.
So
I shouldn't say this because I haven't really noticed above 14 seconds, but I like the new icons. It's making me tempted to update my Mac, so I'm on board, but you maybe not so much.
Oh, I'm fine with them. I'm just finding some of these designs interesting because, again, Apple's abstractions they just keep pushing further and further. like Apple Notes having dark paper. Does that make any sense in dark mode? Reminders being inverted as well, but just for the sake of having a dark icon. Preview having a loop. Does anyone know what that object is in the preview icon? It looks like a whiskey glass turned upside down. Yeah.
No, it's a photographer's loop. I recognised it straight away.
Okay,
never used
but does
one.
Anyone,
but still,
does
anyone
anyone
normal? That's what you're groping
Yeah.
towards, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, or anyone younger? Is that where you're going with it? I was having a lovely time. Okay, the icon stuff with it though. I like that the icons have been refreshed. You mentioned some people going for clear. As it is right now, I put my Mac back to coloured icons because I need to take a screenshot. But I think they've improved the clear one across time, and I enjoyed having nothing on the screen but my work. The thing with... I honestly didn't know that Notes had dark pages on it because I don't happen to like dark mode, so I've never looked at it. But I imagine if your whole system is dark and then you open Apple Notes and it's white, it's going to be really blaring in your face. So is there an option? Is there an alternative? Sounds okay.
The only thing I could... See, the problem with the Notes icon is it shows the paper. The only other option I could think of is making it a closed notebook somehow. But Apple's never shown us what its notebook looks like when it's closed. We only ever see it when it's open, right? The top of the app is the bar. It's a yellow bar, and then the base is the paper, and that bar theoretically is the binding that's holding the paper together. So again, it just gets back to, are we doing skeuomorphism in the icon design? Are we using objects to represent it? Are we using abstractions? Because Apple's kind of doing all three at once, right? We have a music note for music, but podcast is a person with radio waves. And then the camera app is no longer a camera, but a camera lens. And, weather is literally a cloud. Apple News is not a newspaper. It's not anything, actually. It's the abstraction of the letter N in a square form. So I love all the icons, don't get me wrong. I'm just very interested in how they're arriving at these designs, and maybe they're just having fun. I still think, though, that Apple should offer alternative icons within their apps. Let people choose between light and dark mode permanently. So on a per icon basis, let us choose classic icons from Apple's history, and let us even designate new icons if we want to, or based on focus and all of that. Like, that would be the next point, I think. But I think Apple likes having a little bit of control and permanence to each of their icons.
I've got a couple of books somewhere about the history of iOS and macOS icons, and they're beautifully presented, seeing how things change over the years, and you don't
need to get that
always
book.
Notice when they're changing. So I'm into that, but I would never bother to fiddle to go through a dark mode icon, a historical icon, and all this. I mean, there are apps where... Was there an app once that I so couldn't bear the icon, I barely used the app, but that's once in however many years it's been. Just kind of love it. I'm looking at my dock now, and the only thing I don't really like is the fact that still in macOS Tahoe, not as many, but a lot of third-party apps are still inset in a grey frame instead of being full icon shape. But actually, I noticed Final Cut Pro, Apple's own, is in a frame as well. So don't know what that's going on. Don't like that, but it'll change.
The thing is, I like customization on iPhone, clearly. Of course, I can go through on each of my home pages and add custom icons. I found a couple of cool websites that offer download packs, or you can pay for some packs on Gumroad, of course. But you get your custom icons, you go to shortcuts, you make a launcher, you add it to the home screen, and now you have custom icons that can look like items that you use in The Legend of Zelda from the Super Nintendo. Great. That's a very whimsical, fun home screen. It works out really well, especially now that you can turn off your icon names. You can actually make your home screen look like an item menu selector in Link's Awakening. Like, I love that. That's really cool. But you go to the app library and all the icons are still the old icons. It's just a shortcut, right? So we're almost there to the point, but I wonder if Apple ever crossed that line, because I think brands demand absolute final control over their icons, and that's why Apple's giving us this middle ground with shortcuts. We're not literally going in and saying, from now on, Files app is a Finder icon, and we're able to do that in iPad OS and make it permanent forever. That's not what's happening. But if you wanted to make Finder the icon for Files, you could make a shortcut launcher using the Finder image and put it on your dock, and it would work similar to an icon launcher. But the problem is you lose access to the long press functions and other similar system functions.
My mind's going in two different directions here. One is, so on your iPhone, you have the bigger view without the icon names, do you?
Yes.
Right. I really
love
dislike that. It's like, yeah, it's like iPhone for old people is what it looks like for me. And I know there's the argument that you know what it is, you don't need the name, but the tighter, small, I would rather, if we had the option and we could customize things, keep the icons the way they are, lose the names if necessary. I'm not that fussed, but use the space for more icons. That would be handy.
I see.
No.
I've leaned heavily into widgets, and this is my problem with custom icons because the Siri shortcuts widget that shows different your rotates out icons based on your needs, right? It's intelligently doing that. It's using, whatever icon you've chosen for the app or the default icon, and that's fine again, but then I can't customize that, right? If I have a gaming home screen and I want to use Pokemon characters as my icons, well, a Siri shortcuts widget will not respect that. So that's where that kind of falls down. But otherwise, I'm leaning heavily into widgets, and I'm still surprised to this day to see even nerds and non-nerds alike use largely a grid of icons on their home screen with maybe a widget thrown in. And I've actually gone full widget. I don't have any individual icons on almost any home screen except for, I think, my work focus. So,
I have a couple of widgets that I use a lot in the Today view on the iPhone. I was doing a screen recording for something, and I ended up with a few widgets on the iPad screen to illustrate something, and I got rid of them straight away because to me, they take up a lot of space, usually for not a lot of purpose. So, and at the moment, I have no widgets on my Mac at all. I did put a pile in the corner, and I realised I was never once looking at them. So, no,
I've decided to, and I think everyone should check this out. Go to Today View and use that as your everything view. Go and just add widgets. I've made it so it doesn't have to scroll. But my Today View has a bunch of stacked widgets that I can go and check at any time of day. They all smart rotate. So every time I go to Today View, it's usually relevant information, whether it's news or music or fitness information, health, whatever. I've been using it that way so that even when I'm switching focuses, that Today View stays static. And then those widgets are no longer necessary for my home screen because it's in my Today View. And then my home screen's freed up to be more whimsical, whatever designs or whatever it is I want to do with it. But we spent a long time on design, and we have a lot to get through today.
Yes, that's true. I could get into this more, but maybe someday we'll devote an Apple Insider Plus segment to it. And I should explain, if people don't happen to know, Apple Insider Plus is the paid, extended, and ad-free version of this podcast, in which, after the regular edition, Wes and I, or sometimes a guest, will talk about... it's still Apple, of course. It's just not directly news. I mean, it can be, but the point of it is that news is in the main show, and then we all use this stuff. We all work in this Apple ecosystem, and hopefully we all like it. We explore an area of it, and actually this time we're kind of going a little further afield. We're talking about Apple in the world, how Apple deals with its global existence, so how it works with different regulators, different country demands, what it's like, I think, with suppliers around the world. There's all sorts of stuff that goes on with Apple that's away from the devices, but without which there wouldn't be any devices. If you're not already a subscriber, you can join us for Apple Insider Plus by going via Patreon or through Apple Podcast subscriptions, and there's always a detail about both, always a link in the show notes for it. Plus, it would be a treat to have you. But now, actually, back to news, since this is a newsy bit. We've alluded to this already. Apple has sold 3 billion iPhones since 2007. I think you can say that's a hit. Then I think, it's reasonable success. Maybe give it a little longer. But coming to future iPhones, seemingly very slowly, is more and more of Apple intelligence. And this week, we heard sounds of what I I believe, is a rare kind of all-hands meeting of Apple's staff, and it was specifically about AI. Have I got that right? Is it rare?
It's pretty rare for Apple, especially to pull so many divisions out of their work to have this kind of chat kind of thing. But they address some of the elephants in the room about Apple Intelligence and Apple's goals. But of course, they talk about a lot of everything else as well. But we focused on the Apple Intelligence portion because that was really the most interesting. When I wrote about the 3 billion iPhones, which was revealed during the Apple earnings call last week, I leaned into the fact that, well, what's going to get us to 4 billion? And right, it's interesting because the first billion took 9 years, the second billion took 5 years, and the third billion took 4 years. And I'm betting that the next billion will be under 4 years, maybe even 3 years. So 2028, we could be talking about this again. But what gets us there, I think, in this acceleration that we've seen is how Apple's been handling iPhone, right? We saw iPhone 4 take over when it spread to other carriers, iPhone 6 explode when it got bigger sizes, iPhone 10 with its radical redesign, showcasing each moment that Apple really blew up that generation. And I think this generation is going to be Apple Intelligence. And I know a lot of people are rolling their eyes, but this all-hands call, I called it all-hands call because that's what they call it in the military. This all-hands meeting basically reiterates what I've been saying about Apple's strategy around Apple Intelligence. If you've been following what I've been writing about Apple Intelligence, especially related to Bloomberg's pieces recently, because they've had an opposite view, I've tried taking a more valuable approach rather than the regular doom and gloom headlines by actually examining what Apple's doing, what they're saying, what they're showing us, and how Apple's behaved before. And every time Apple speaks on Apple Intelligence publicly or in a leaked all hands call, I think they reveal more and more that I'm towing us in the right direction with these reports. And not to toot my own horn, but I've never bought into this doom and gloom that Apple's behind, and I've never bought into this whole brain drain concept that they're losing too many people, nobody cares about Apple Intelligence, and they're just going to swap it out for Anthropic or something. And this meeting with the executives speaking about Apple Intelligence and everything reinforced that strongly, because basically, well, I'll let you speak on it for a second.
Oh, don't tantalise me like that. Although, okay, I've got to say, until you said it was a military thing, I thought all hands was a corporate stuff. BBC Worldwide used to have what it called all hands meetings. I'm sure it still does. Just a long time since I worked there. And I can tell you that they're always can I say this? They were really, really boring. It felt like so that we can tell people we had a meeting rather than anything else. I seem to remember a conversation about toilet paper in one of them. That stands out for some reason. But, okay, you have convinced me over the weeks that you're right about Apple Intelligence. And actually in the last week or so, really since I've been getting even more into shortcuts with Apple Intelligence, and I'm finding so many benefits to it. I've been going around recommending you use Apple Intelligence in shortcuts, and people are looking at me like they didn't get to the in shortcuts part. They're just giving me a funny look, and I've got to go, no, really, it's good. And I thought, I'm surprised at myself for saying Apple Intelligence is good, because I'm a writer. I'll never touch any of the writing tools. They're worthless to me, and that seemed like their big thing so far. But then visual intelligence is good, shortcuts. I'm becoming an Apple Intelligence convert, and it's partly your fault. I partly blame you. But now, you teased. Get back to the next bit. What happens next?
So a year ago, Tim Cook said something along the lines of, we're not coming out the gates here with the greatest thing on the planet. He can acknowledge that, but he says that Apple will be the best. And everyone again rolled their eyes. That's, the usual corporate speak. But looking at the timetables and what were the future features of Apple Intelligence that we are getting, I fully expect that to be true. And you guys can go read my stuff, and I refer to the last 3 weeks of me talking about this. We don't need to get into it again, but quickly. We're getting, like you said, foundation models in Apple shortcuts, foundation models via private cloud compute for developers in the fall with iOS 26. In the spring, we're getting personalized contextual Siri with full LLM backend built by Apple on Apple Intelligence. And probably sometime in the next year, unannounced, we're getting third-party access to Anthropic, ChatGPT, probably even Google Gemini via private cloud compute, renewable energy servers, fully private access, which also possibly means shortcut support, foundation model attachments via developer support and third-party apps. It's going to be a wide-ranging, incredible AI ecosystem, and Apple's the only one doing this, and it's going to be very powerful. And then I bring that timeline up again because Tim Cook said, "We've rarely been first. There was PC before the Mac. There was smartphone before the iPhone. There were many tablets before the iPad. There was an MP3 player before iPod. All of us are using AI in a significant way already, and we must use it as a company as well. To not do so would be left behind, and we can't do that." And he's basically saying that Apple is going to be the forefront of AI in the future, just the same way they are the forefront of the smartphone and the tablet and similar products.
I suppose he would say that. I kind of hope he's right because I like the way Apple's doing it. But again, I'm surprised I'm saying that. This episode is brought to you by Oracle. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you only get to pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How is it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/AppleInsider. That's oracle.com/AppleInsider. And thanks to Oracle for supporting the Apple Insider Podcast. One thing, though, it's not synonymous, AI and chatbot, but to a lot of people it seems to be. And there is this story that Siri, poor little Siri, failed little Siri, is going to come back and hopefully work, but also include like a ChatGPT search bot for it.
So,
have I got that right? Because I'm concerned.
Apple has a very distinct way of describing this, and I think people get this wrong a lot. So you have to listen to the executives when they speak. I know, again, there's a lot of corporate stuff in there, but they are saying things that are important. Joswiak says they don't have any intention or desire to build a chatbot. And I think that still holds true, because when he talks about what is a chatbot, he means an app with a destination. He means that there is never, again, never say never. Apple does change their mind, so this isn't forever. Yeah. But as of right now, their intention is there isn't going to be a Siri app that you open and have and treat it like ChatGPT, where you're dumping information in and have this memory feature. Like, they're not going to build literally ChatGPT with an app destination where that stuff is. Instead, Apple's intention is to have your device be the app, right? Your device is the home of your Apple Intelligence, running the foundation model that is branched into many different agents, all with access to your on-device personal information already. There's no need for you to configure anything. There's no need for you to go to an app and describe who you are. It already knows. So the next step to that would be, well, what Apple calls world intelligence or global intelligence, I suppose. So when Apple talks about, I can't remember the exact phrase, I think it's something like world intelligence. They're talking about ChatGPT being able to tap into historical context. Like the other day, I did a search just to see what it would say about Apple manufacturing something or other. And Google and ChatGPT and the other ones I checked were basically already up to date within an hour of information that had just happened. That is world information, right? That is kind of like a search engine, like how Google's supposed to work and no longer works. Apple, I think, is building that into Siri. So they're not necessarily making a chat bot because that isn't their intention, but they're going to allow the LLM-powered Siri that will be released in the spring to also have access to world information via what is provided by the Apple bot crawler, similar to how search engines have worked before. And they're going to enable the ability for users to search for world information like who is this actor and all this stuff using AI as the backend instead of the general spotlight search that was there before, and probably still fall back to ChatGPT and others if necessary. But before they weren't doing that, and now they're working on that. That's clear.
It's like one step forward, two steps back with me. I am mostly more encouraged. What you just said there sounds very promising, and it sounds achievable. Actually, I mean, what do I know? But it sounded, except the fact that it centers on Siri. And I struggle with the fact that Siri has become so bad.
That's the thing.
Why
is it like that? Craig Federighi made this clear in the meeting, right? So he says there's a reason why Siri was delayed. There's not a good name for it. The more personalized, contextual, Apple Intelligence-driven Siri. All right, we need a word for that. But smart Siri. We initially wanted, this is a quote, we initially wanted to do a hybrid architecture. We realized that approach wasn't going to get us to Apple quality. So what he means by that is they were going to have the old machine learning-driven, search-driven Siri built and running parallel to the new LLM-backed Siri, and they were going to talk to each other, and when you asked a query, they were going to vote on which one would be better at answering, and they were going to return results and hope to overcome the issues that AI represents. And if you've seen the disastrous launch of Alexa Plus, it struggles with doing home commands because it's trying to have a conversation with you, right? You don't want that. Right, you don't want to say set an alarm and it's asking you questions about how your day was because it's trying to be a chatbot. So they're trying to walk that line, and then Apple realized a little too late this is not a good approach. We actually do need to build the entire backend on LLMs and then work back to making it a better assistant and agent simultaneously. So he says the work we've done on this end-to-end revamp of Siri has given us the results we needed. I think that's a typo or maybe a misspeak. This has I think he meant to say has not given us the results we needed. This has put us in a position to not just deliver. Oh, sorry. This is a pull quote from after he said something else. So the hybrid approach wasn't going to get Apple where they needed to be. Then at some point he says, we're going to do a full backend, and that backend, now quoting, the work we've done to get to this end-to-end revamp of Siri has given us the results we needed. This has put us in a position to not just deliver what we announced, but to deliver a much bigger upgrade than we envisioned. There is no project people are taking more seriously. I bring this up because what is going to launch in the spring and what we might see at some event, probably even the iPhone event, I don't know if they'll want to do that again or not, but they might, is this even more powerful, personalized, contextual, and even possibly world knowledge built LLM-backed Siri. And that will be what launches. They could call it whatever they want. It's not Siri anymore. It's not the lore Siri that we have had since 2011, 14. I forget when it launched. Off the top of my head at this second. But yeah, like it's not that anymore. It's not the machine learning one anymore. It could literally be called Siri 2 because it is not the same architecture. It is not the same bot where it literally a complete replacement. So whatever fears, whatever concerns you have about the current model that isn't working, put it aside because it is not going to be in place anymore when this comes out. They're completely replacing it.
Yeah, the problem is they delivered a worse Siri. So we're counting on to deliver a better one next.
They haven't.
I hope
that's
you're
the
right.
problem.
Yeah.
They haven't changed anything.
Well, they have.
Like they kept piling. They kept piling junk on it. Yeah. They were trying to staple on features.
What it used to do.
Yes, because of the stapled on features.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they delivered a worse Siri experience, and yes. I think that's unacceptable.
They took the wrong approach.
Why?
Absolutely.
Yeah, how did they do it so wrong for it? But now we're having to assume that they're not going to get it so wrong again. But I'll tell you what, in fact,
who knows what this is going to look like? That's
true. So I am anti-Siri at the moment, and that actually really hurts me because I've loved it for so long. I had become reliant on it, and now forget it. I may have to relearn all this stuff. I'm sounding quite anti-Apple Intelligence, and I'm not so much for it. I suppose the only thing really I'm anti at the moment is Perplexity, but is that another story? Can you sum up Perplexity and its situation?
Well, it's an interesting company. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's not actually its own AI. It's actually building off of other people's architectures and presenting it as a different front end. And they're
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah, so maybe I'm wrong about this, but I seem to remember that they're still using their own agents and bots to collect data, but their back end so disregard that. That's how they're getting to the AI part of it isn't important. So I may be wrong. I'm going to have to go do research on that to speak more strongly on it. But in any case, however they're getting to their AI isn't the problem. The company itself is still delivering an AI tool front end that is basically, it's complex, right? This whole AI thing has been kind of crazy lately, and we're kind of seeing the bubble coming close to popping, which is going to be disastrous for the United States economy, which I've seen reports showing that AI hiring and spending by companies like Meta and OpenAI have basically been what's propping up the economy and absorbing a lot of the losses. And that once this bubble pops, this is going to be 10 times worse than we ever thought, than the web bubble popping, right? So anyway, okay. so I just wanted to point that out because it's a lot of this stuff is kind of collapsing on itself. Google is reducing traffic to websites and no longer presenting reliable information in spite of that. And the web is getting less and less reliable as AI is becoming more prevalent. And even then, though, those companies that are kind of ruining the open web with their need to absorb all information and prevent people from visiting websites, they're still respecting something called robots.txt, which is when a website says, and it's not a legal thing, it's literally just a line of script in a website that says, hey, if you're this bot, don't crawl our page, period. Right? Or it'll say, if you are this bot, you can crawl this page. It's how people can say Applebot can or can't crawl the page. Apple actually pointed out to developers after announcing they already did it, that they can block Applebot if they want to stop Apple Intelligence from crawling their page. So Apple respects that. They even respect it if Applebot isn't blocked, but Googlebot is, whatever Googlebot's called, Apple will still respect that, actually, which is kind of funny. They're actually just saying, we can tell when you don't want a bot crawling your page and you forgot to block us. We'll acknowledge that. So Apple's going the extra mile there to try and be ethical in this very weird space that we find ourselves in. Perplexity, on the other hand, has taken a different tact. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We had a report last year from Wired, actually, covering also a report from Rob Knight, I believe, who works with Mac Stories, but he also has a personal blog he published this on. So you can go see those stories. They're linked in the story I wrote. So that was last year. They pointed out that they've noticed non-assigned bots with different IP addresses that are not listed on Perplexity's page crawling their page and providing Perplexity with information that they shouldn't have access to, right? They did some research and found that out. People talked about it, but it kind of came and went, and it seemed to be kind of forgotten until this year. Cloudflare did a almost identical bit of research, found same findings, except not only are they using unlisted bots with unlisted IP addresses, they're also changing the ASNs, which are the basically serial numbers assigned to these bots, to allow basically make them entities tied to something. So they're not tied to Perplexity in any way, even through that system. And yet they belong to Perplexity. Because of testing, they were able to find, if they created a brand new website, put information on it, asked Perplexity to give them information about that website, they would see the Perplexity crawler get blocked by robots.txt, then a different crawler show up unassigned to anyone, and then the AI bot on Perplexity would be like, here's your information you wanted, even though it could not access that web page. And so clearly it belongs to Perplexity. And then Perplexity replied, saying, basically calling Cloudflare a bunch of hacks. They don't know what they're talking about. This isn't, this is pretty much literally what they said. I'm not paraphrasing. They're just basically saying they clearly don't know what AI is or how it's meant to operate because we're doing the right thing. And Perplexity's argument is crawlers and agents are different. And robots.txt is for crawlers, like Google search bot, which is taking information and using it to train models. And for permanent storage and training and designing and for advertising or whatever, right? They're taking the information home for use at the company. That is a crawler by Perplexity's definition. And they respect that robots.txt blocks that. But what they're sending out is what they call AI agents, which are human-like robots acting on behalf of the user. And it's no different than a user going to the web page, getting the information, so therefore they do not have to respect robots.txt. And because they're not using it to train their model, they're just taking the information, going back to the user and presenting it to them, they are not doing anything wrong because the information is then thrown out and not used to train anything. So that's Perplexity's argument here. But here's the counter, and here's the problem, and I'll let you speak.
You can feel them slightly bubbling away to say here, but yes.
Yeah. So it's taking away, again, so Perplexity's argument is this is the free and open web and they're allowed to do this. But what Perplexity is doing is destroying the free and open web because they're eliminating the ability for human content to exist. If humans aren't seeking out human-created content, money is not being made. Therefore, the human-created content will cease. And therefore, Perplexity will have nothing to fetch. They are actively destroying the very thing that they are arguing in favor of. And that is the problem here. If humans cannot be bothered... Now, it would be different. This is how I think Perplexity could solve their problem. And I'll let you say whatever you need to say. Don't take all the information and just throw it up in a text view, pretending like Perplexity knew it all along. Return with search results. Be a search engine. That's fine. If you want to be an agent and not train your data, and your bot runs into a wall and says, you can't come here, then grab the link, take it back to the person and say, hey, this link might be what you needed. And the person has to open the link and read the web page as a human being and then get the information themselves. That would be fair. And then no robots.txt is being violated. The website is still being accessed by a human being, and the information is still being provided by Perplexity, solving all three problems. But I don't think they have any interest in that.
I'm afraid I don't think it does solve a problem. I like the idea, except if that was how Perplexity or any of them worked, it would inevitably return hundreds perhaps of links because there was no way for it to determine whether or not something actually is right. It's just it might be, and there's no way.
That's how Google Search worked. For 25 years, we've been using Google Search, and it's a list of links, and the number one link is the most relevant, and then it gets less relevant going down, and you could have 60 million results. Google loved that. They would be like, we got you 1.8 million results on macaroni and cheese. And like, you as a human being are never going to look at all those, but the number one result might be what you needed. And that worked for the web.
Yeah.
It worked for the web. It worked for advertising. That's how it has always worked. And AI can be more intelligent than the old web crawlers of yore. Yeah, sure. But they don't need to be summarizing that information. Take the user to the content in increasingly better ways, compete directly with Google in an intelligent way, and let the chatbot be a chatbot, but don't steal people's information in the process. That's the problem I have.
My problem. I didn't know all of the detail of what you just said, and that just fits with what I thought of it. My problem is you did say in there what Perplexity's argument is. And actually, that's what Perplexity's argument is now. When Perplexity first came out, it was, no, we're ethical, we're great, we do it all right.
Oh, right.
And then when that stuff was happening last year, I can't remember the quotes, but there was a line from the CEO somewhere on social media that basically said, yeah, we had a few teething problems. So, like, implicitly admitting that it was wrong, suggesting that it was an error and it was being fixed. And now it's, no, this is fine, this is great, we're doing it. And reading that was the moment I actually chucked Perplexity off my Mac. And funnily enough, I did this is going to sound so silly, I switched to ChatGPT, but ChatGPT via Apple Intelligence. I wrote a shortcut, push a button, it sends something via Apple Intelligence to ChatGPT, and that's been working fine for me these last few days. But speaking of all of this stuff, let's get on to something fun, which is September the 9th, 2025 is now. Isn't that the anniversary of when the moon was blasted out of orbit in space 1999? I might have to look that up. But September 2025, this is, we believe, when it's going to be, when the iPhone launch is?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's always September, except for when it isn't, and that was during COVID, so I think it's still going to be September. September 9th, we're going to get a event. Potentially, this is now confirmed by carriers in Germany, which tends to be accurate. The translation error, I don't know. This sentence was convoluted, but it said pre-orders begin immediately starting Friday. So it could either mean pre-orders are September 9th, September 10th, or September 12th. But it's that week anyway, and shipments would be available and in-store September 19th. So seems pretty standard fare for Apple.
One thing I'd say, you said German carriers plural there, and that's what the claim is, that mobile phone companies, carrier companies, had been informed to expect the launch on this date. There's the way that phrasing is done again in translation, there's a small possibility that the source that uncovered this is trying to protect which one carrier leaked to them, and maybe they haven't all been told. We don't know. So there's still some doubt, but it looks every way going that on September the 9th, you're going to be wanting a new iPhone.
Yeah, this happens every year. I don't know if it's always German carriers, but there's always a foreign carrier that's like, we know when the iPhone's coming, and it's pretty accurate. It's not that Apple tells them anything; it's that like T-Mobile tells them or something. Like it's this really weird back channel of Apple has to notify the FCC and various regulations around the world, and then those regulators notify companies through a back-end channel. It's not public information. And it's not that these regulators are saying Apple's going to release the iPhone on this day. It's just expect major traffic changes on, so it's, you pretty much can walk your way back to it. But, I wonder if you're going to get an iPhone this year because a couple weeks before the iPhone's going to be announced, there's going to be a brand new, almost iPhone called the Google Pixel. Are you sure you're not going to get that one?
I've actually got a widget on my Today View counting down the days until I can order I've already forgotten what it was, probably a Pixel. So what was Pixel the number
10.
On it? Pixel 10. Yeah, I mean, 10's the charm, isn't it? I know nothing about it. So what am I missing out on, and do I care at all?
It's interesting because Apple's going to go to camera bars this year, which is going to make the iPhone... Now, Apple's camera bars are squircles, and Pixel's camera bars are ovals, so they're different. But Google's phone outside of the camera bar is literally cut off the camera bar and take off the G, and cut off Apple's camera bump and cut off the Apple logo. They're the same phone. They are identical. And that's just Google being Google. Pixel's always been known as the iPhone for Android users, and I think that stands true. And Google knows that. And that's why in the last couple of years we've seen Google increasingly advertise towards iPhone users in a way that is often very silly. Their ads are playful, try to make fun of iPhone in some way. A little different from Samsung's edgier toned eyebrow raising, literally, ads that they did for like iPhone 10 and the notch and everything. Those were just insulting and frankly stupid. The Google ads last year were basically iPhone and Google Pixel having an AI conversation, and Siri's voice sounded like a robot, which it hasn't in years. Yeah. But even so, Google tried to dumb it down and make it as bad as possible to make people think that Google was this light years ahead. Meanwhile, it really isn't doing anything that different from iPhone, frankly. The only difference being is Google Gemini is an actual like LLM search engine, and it's available on Android, but like as a like native search function. That's literally the only difference between it and like your standard like Google phones, which can still Android phones can still just tap into Gemini if they want to. It's just a different OEM running the same operating system versus iPhone not being able to do that directly because it's Apple and you're using Apple Intelligence. So in any case, those ads last year were very silly and kind of pointless, and if anything, probably helped sell more iPhones to Google users because, as always, it makes people curious. Well, maybe I am a Pixel user. What's so bad about what's the iPhone about? Why are they telling me I shouldn't be buying it? And then they go buy an iPhone, and it almost always works the opposite direction that these companies want. Same thing for Samsung when they do it. Well, this year, Google again points to its competitors instead of talking about the merits of its own device, and says that Apple delayed one feature, and therefore, what are you waiting for? Stop waiting for coming soon. Get the Google Pixel, which is coming soon. So, I feel like the ad kind of forgot that part, that the Google Pixel 10 actually isn't out yet and is coming soon. So it kind of upends the anyway. So, meanwhile, I went to a handy website called killedbygoogle.com, run by a fun person, has 279 listed canceled projects from Google. And I wonder if they forgot about that before they wanted to talk about the one feature that is still coming and is still going to be available on the iPhone 16 when it does launch. It was just delayed because they had to refactor it, as we discussed earlier. But how many features have Apple actively announced and never released? I think AirPower, and that's the end of the list. We have a couple of oddballs through history. I think there was like a Safari redesign that just never made it through that people hated. But yeah, I don't get the point of this ad other than to point out Google's own failings again.
Well, not to sound like, that I'm driven by fashion more than anything else. There I was, convinced I should buy a Google, whatever the number was. I was deeply convinced, you could tell. But now when you said that about the ads, and you said that Google dumbed it down for a minute, I thought you meant the ads rather than Siri's voice. I thought, yeah, actually, I remember that ad. That was atrocious. So no, I'm back on Team iPhone. Am I fickle or just... no, I'm just fickle, really.
People have been talking about jumping ship from iPhone for various reasons, and one of them this week is, well, Tim Cook went to the White House, and we're going to get into Controversy Corner, but I didn't want anyone to completely miss this news, so I just want to say what happened, and then we can get into Controversy Corner.
Let's call it the Controversy Corner on-ramp, which is previously on Apple. This week, Apple did, some good, really, didn't it? For those who don't know, around 2017, Apple started this advanced manufacturing fund. Literally, I think it was something advanced manufacturing. Anyway, it was in the millions or even $1 billion. I think it might have even been $1 billion. And then it was very popular.
They announced it shortly after the president was inaugurated, which seems to be a pattern here. 2017, if you're keeping track, was Donald Trump, and he was very interested in America. He was very interested in America first. So Apple wanted to point out what they're doing for America. Turns out they've always been doing for America, right? Corning being the glass maker for iPhone and some Apple Watches, and now all Apple Watches. They are an American company out of Kentucky. They've invested heavily in them over the last decade. They've also got thousands of suppliers in the United States that they work with, 10 of them being particularly huge and important, located all over the United States. Still, though, only about 5% of components that go into iPhone come from the United States. Even though all of those, there's a lot of names and a lot of companies, it's still only 5% because there's a lot of components that go into iPhone. Anyway, so in 2017, Apple announced this fund, and since then, they've increased it significantly. So it went from a few billion to 100 billion to 300 billion, and by 2021, we were talking about $300 billion. And in 2021, there was a press release about how Apple's investing $45 billion or whatever into Corning itself, and they're going to make all new glass and ceramic glasses thanks to Corning, and we're investing in American technology. 2021, guys, I want to note, is, again, right after the inauguration of the new president. So, again, Apple wants to point out how great it is for America, and don't regulate us, please. So,
yes.
Fast forward 4 years, and they did the similar thing. President Trump got inaugurated. I think the same day, if not the day after, Apple did their super big, and we're doing $500 billion now. Well, so it's not $500 billion new dollars, actually. It's in addition, the total since 2017 is now going to be $500 billion, and it's going to take 4 years to reach that total, right? It's funny how it takes 4 years, right, William? It's always... I wonder if they matched it to anything else that takes every 4 years or anything. But by 2028, Apple will have invested $500 billion. Well, since the beginning of the year, things have gotten a little wild. Apple's been asked to manufacture iPhones in the United States. We have this very strong drive to drive companies to the United States, tariffs being one of those incentives, saying if you build here, you don't have to pay them and all of that stuff. So Apple was like, we can't really do that, but here's what we are going to do. They added on another $100 billion. So it's still in the next 4 years. It's still by 2029. So by the time the next president is inaugurated, because that's when they'll announce the results again and say, now it's $1 trillion. You know, it's just, they're going to keep doing it. But they topped it off. Another $100 billion for the United States economy, another 20,000 jobs for the United States economy. We're building these new factories in Arizona, and it's going to all be huge. And Apple announced that this week, and Tim Cook went to the White House and announced it. He basically read the press release in front of news cameras. There was nothing particularly special about it, except he gave Donald Trump an award. We'll get into that in a second. Not an award, but a tchotchke, what's the word? Plaque. He gave him a plaque to commemorate the event. Sure, that's a thing that happens a lot in corporate America, believe it or not. They like commemorating things. And that's it. So we'll get into the controversy, but I do want to point out briefly that almost nothing changed. The goal is now bigger. That is true. But the companies they're working with and the projects they had planned, all of that stuff hasn't really changed. The biggest difference was the Corning announcement. And that was a separate press release because it was so important, of all iPhone glass and all Apple Watch glass being made by Corning now, instead of something like 90% previously.
I do think Tim Cook, Apple under Tim Cook, is more up for bringing jobs to the States than Steve Jobs was at the end. Steve Jobs, right back at the start, wanted to make the original Mac on a very, at the time, Japanese-style automated production system. So he was really behind a lot of the driving away, and Tim Cook kind of pulled it back. There's just... everybody says Apple can do anything because there's so much money, but it is just one company. So they've started an education fund, the Manufacturing Academy in Detroit. It's 2 days long. There's got to be a physical limit time people can go there, but you know, it's a start. If the US is to get manufacturing back, it needs nationwide, government-backed education, and neither this administration nor the last seem to be even looking at that. But now, we've got to say this, I think we've tipped over the edge. This is now officially, look at your chapter mark artwork, Controversy Corner.
Yeah, so we need to dive into this a little bit. We're at the end of the show. We don't need long, but
No.
more or less, a lot of people are upset that Tim Cook did this because they think they're bowing down to the king, or whatever euphemism you want to use. Yeah. I think this is brilliant. I don't know why people look at this as actual capitulation, because capitulation, kowtowing, whatever stupid word you want to use, what it actually is what Meta is doing, what Google is doing. They are not only they're going above and beyond. Google has eliminated all DEI efforts, and not only that, they took it a step further. It's insult to injury. They're no longer donating to any cause that has DEI in their structure, period. That is tragically messed up. Meta is just allowing people to, I don't even want to say the words out loud because it's awful. They took away all of their moderation and basically say you can make fun of Jews now openly on Meta, for example, or dead name trans people, or just all these awful things because Mark Zuckerberg wants Trump to like him. So he's making Facebook and Instagram into X as much as he can. So that is what it looks like what Amazon is doing, millions of dollars in donations, schmoozing, and just tax breaks and all. These things are what capitulation look like. What Apple is doing is hilariously not that, to the point that it's kind of it's almost an SNL skit level of stupid. The Onion wrote an article about it, because look at it on its surface, William. Tim Cook is we can't build in the U.S. and these tariffs are going to make us raise the iPhone by $500. What can we do? And someone's like, make him a trophy. And so they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get a box made in America cardboard, and we're going to get a piece of Corning Gorilla Glass that costs 50 cents. And we're going to get this Marine that works at Apple to design it so we can say that a Marine did it, and it's going to be super American because of that. And we're going to get this hunk of 24 karat foil and wrap it around a iron base and say that it's 24 karat gold, and put a piece of glass in it and hand it to Trump, and it costs us $4, and he's going to put it in his office and tell everyone in the world how great Apple is. And that's what happened. And by golly, did Trump love that trophy. You should have seen their grinning faces in that press release. They were just so happy to see Tim Cook describe how American this is. When in between Trump speaking, because he has to talk about egg prices and stuff for 15 minutes with Tim Cook standing awkwardly next to him. But when he finally did let Tim Cook speak, Cook goes up to the microphone and he says something along the lines of, we're thankful that President Trump is thinking of America's industrial complex and wanting to bring more innovation back to the United States. And while he's saying this, Donald Trump grabs his shirt, pulls it out, literally comically puffs out his chest and raises his eyebrows twice, like a little Monopoly man. It was so funny, but you can't make this up. I swear this is not an SNL skit. And Apple announces Tim Cook reads the press release, and it's all these numbers, and it's Trump's Tim Cook gets it. He's really doing great for America, yada yada. And in the press briefing, someone's like, "Well, what about the tariffs?" And Trump's like, "Oh, Apple's exempt now. Who cares? They're so cool." And they're like, "Well, what about bringing an iPhone to America?" And he's like, "I talked to Tim Cook about that. Actually, it's a lot harder than we thought." He says this. He's like, it's been built over there for so long, and it's so complex that it's going to take a long time. And I'm going to let Tim Cook do it because I know he's doing it. Let him take it's going to happen. Apple is coming back to America, and that was the end of it. And so he just basically says, whatever, it's okay now. Tim Cook doesn't need he's going to do it eventually. I trust him, so whatever. So Apple completely cleared their docket. They're no longer under any real pressure from the president over any of this stuff, all because they put together a press release announcing stuff they were already going to do in a pretty bow and let Tim Cook do a press briefing at the White House. That is brilliant. Apple still has DEI. Apple still has renewable energy out the wazoo. In fact, Donald Trump praised Apple for their renewable energy without realizing it. He did it in his Trumpy way. He said, it's really cool that you guys are building these factories with your own energy output. It's like you have your own electric companies. That's really cool. That's smart. Only Tim Cook would think of that. And it's like, okay, thanks, Donald. But anyway, that's that. I'll let you speak now.
Well, actually, you've covered everything. I think I would like to exit Controversy Corner with just the thought that you said Apple's under no pressure now this week. Okay?
This week.
We'll see what happens
tomorrow.
Next time. Mm-hmm. Yes. But I need something. I got to say, I think Apple's doing politics extremely well, and
so smart. Yeah.
I suppose all praise them. I did find a quote from Tim Cook from a long, long time ago, long before Trump was around, I think, talking about wanting to bring stuff back to America. And somewhere along the way, it must have been in entering the Trump era, he started talking about how he believes in talking to people, that even though you might totally disagree, you still need to discuss and negotiate. And he's doing that, but also basically playing him. So.
So I want to offer up the alternative, and we've actually had this discussion before about China, and we're going to get into this in the Apple Insider Plus segment. But people are like, well, Tim Cook doing anything because Trump wants him to is capitulation. My counteroffer is, what does he do then? Apple can't is he going to commit a coup and overthrow the president? Like the alternative is being fined, tariffed, courted, and regulated out of existence, right? Like, show me a company that is doing anything better than Apple in this respect, right? Is Nike going out here and telling Donald Trump he's wrong and holding strikes out front of the White House? I don't know what you expect Apple to do in this situation. Donald Trump is the government right now. He owns the courts. He owns the Supreme Court. He owns Congress. What is Apple going to do? They would just get regulated out of existence. They would get tariffed to the point that the iPhone would be $2,000 and Donald Trump would be promoting Samsung, right? I don't understand what people expect Apple and Tim Cook to do. Apple is not kissing Trump's feet. Like I described, he's honestly making a fool out of the man, showing how pliable he is, how easily manipulated he is, how corrupt he is. And Apple doesn't even have to do anything to do that. And that's actually really incredibly smart. And people are like, well, I'm going to Android. And then you look at, I'm like, okay, what are you going to do? Buy American? Okay, you're going to buy a Google phone because every other Android OEM is Chinese, basically, or Korean. Okay. So you're going pro-America. All right, we're going to get a Google Pixel. Well, look at what Google's doing. They're doing way worse than what Apple's doing. I get it. This is the master and commander moment, the lesser of two evils, and I'm going to pick Apple in this one. I understand it's scummy. I understand it's not ideal. But what is the alternative?
Do this for me. Cheer me up with something nice that I can't actually pronounce, but is some kind of dock that looks like an old Mac from the good old days. A Wookie. Explain, please. Okay.
I couldn't tell you how it's pronounced. I guess it depends on the country of origin. It's probably Waki or something like that. Or if you're super American Southern, you could say Wokius. No, it's a very cute little Mac Mini cover docking station. It has a bunch of ports. You get USB A ports, a C port, some SD card slots in the front. It looks like a little Mac. What is the guy? Mac Plus? My brain just completely emptied out. Mac Plus, yes. So it's like a little Mac Plus. It sits on top of the Mac Mini. It has a display, like a 5-inch 720p display. And the Mac Mini just plugs into it. It's really cute. I'm going to get a review unit of one of these too, because there's a different model coming out, and I'm going to be checking this out too. I think it's going to be my new podcast setup, William.
But sorry, this sits over the Mac Mini? Aren't there ventilation things or problems like that?
Well, if you look at the Mac Mini, it is a solid cube of aluminum, and then underneath is all the fans. So,
I see. Right.
it's not.
So as long as that's
it wouldn't
clear.
obstruct. Yeah. It's only covering the aluminum top casing, and has vents in the bottom as well.
So you threw this out as a bone, and I didn't miss it. I was still perplexed. You're going to make your podcasting setup be Mac-based, and you realise that means to me you've seen the light, you're using a Mac.
Well,
as great as everything else is Mac wins, but you're going to use it tucked away, hidden, and looking like an older version of itself.
Well, now I think I'll put it on my desk. This is a photography table. If you ever see my photos, you might see this. I have like a few different backdrops, but I podcast here because it's a nice empty space and I can usually cushion it, which I actually forgot to do that this week, so I might have a slight echo. Anyway, I think I sound fine on my headphones, so tell me if I'm wrong. But yeah, it's a good space for me to podcast in, and I think I'll put it on the desk. It'll just be a cute little ornament. It'll look nice because it looks like a little Mac Plus. It has a little 5-inch display so I can see what I'm doing when I'm setting up the podcast. That's all I really need. So no, William, it will no longer be hidden on a bookshelf. It will be hidden on my desk, disguised as a Mac Plus. But I don't know. I just find it interesting. And of course, the minute I can start podcasting regularly from my iPad, I'll do that instead. But for now, this is a good in-between solution. So
let me just test one thing. There's a screen on it because it looks like a Mac Plus. If I buy this and a Mac Mini, is that a complete setup for it? It is the display for the Mac Mini.
Mm-hmm. And it's powered by the Mac Mini USB port. There's no external power required. Yeah, just a full dock station. There's even like a little SSD thing in the back. You can add a SSD to. So
the only thing that would make it perfect would be a more pronounceable name. All right, cool.
Mm-hmm. And of course the display is wretched, but it's a 720p 5-inch display, but I don't need it to be pretty. I just need it to work.
Okay. Should people want to ask you more about this, they can obviously look at articles on AppleInsider.com, but they might reach out to you directly and personally. And how would they do that these days?
Well, I am active on Blue Sky. I'm on Mastodon. You can see me post about my weekly blog on those as well. I've been summarizing the news. I take it much more in depth, and there's more me in there, of course. So if you ever want to read those, I was really happy with last week's post. Actually, Ghost is the platform I use, and they just had a big 6.0 update with analytics that don't rely on Google. I never added analytics because I didn't want to use Google. And now they have it, but it's the middle tier, so I'd have to spend $200 more a year. So I'm trying to consider whether or not I should start asking for minimal donations to at least break even. Because if I'm going to spend like $300 a year, I need to at least break even on that silly thing. But you can find me on that. Been enjoying doing that. But of course, you can find me on Apple Insider. Find my name, click on it. You can see everything I've ever written. My email is wes@appleinsider.com if you want to reach out. And of course, you can always contact us via the podcast app if you want to leave a review, which we have no new reviews in the last few weeks. I really think we have hit our maximum. Everyone that's ever going to leave a review has left a review until we get some new listeners. So if you are listening to this and you've never left a review, or you're new here, please go leave a review. We'll read it here on the show right here in this segment. So
cool. To reach me, should you so wish to, William at AppleInsider.com is always good, and I'm on YouTube as 58 Keys. I am on other places, but I'm actually, one day we must discuss what social media is working days, because I'm finding I just get followed a lot on Blue Sky by people who then mysteriously vanish, like their account has been deleted, or they shall I say, flirt with me a bit in direct messages, and that seems very unlikely, but there you go. So, William at AppleInsider.com, 58 Keys on YouTube, all these things, plus the podcast here. And if you were to go have a look at the podcast reviews, you can also have the option to go through to podcasts, Apple Podcasts Connect, and join Apple Insider Plus, as you can through Patreon as well. And So to do this, you would now have an extended copy of it, a version of the Apple Insider podcast that's ad-free, much longer, and going into deeper areas, all related to Apple, of course, but slightly deeper and maybe a bit broader than just news of the week kind of stuff. And as we mentioned before, this week's one is going to be about Apple's footprint in the world and how it deals with being this global enterprise kind of thing. That's coming in a moment for Apple Insider Plus subscribers. I'd also like to say thank you to Oracle for sponsoring this week's edition, and thank you to you for listening. And also, Wes, thanks for filling me in on all of these things. Let's do some more of that in a few minutes' time, and otherwise, I think we'll both be back next week with more.
Yep. Talk then.